Hello, welcome back to yeah, welcome back to the Cult of Cantona, everyone. It's Paul here. So it's been a turbulent and a windy couple of days, in a couple of different ways. It seems as if that the Ruben Amorim storm is gonna continue to rattle on for quite a while. I put out a video last week on our page saying that I was very disappointed with how things are progressing, and that I felt, and I suppose collectively we felt on the show that it was time for Ruben Amorim to move on to pastures new. Yeah, I mean, football fans really are a fickle bunch, aren't they? But at the same time, we're in a results game, and as I said, as I alluded to in the last video that we put out, that it's really not good enough, and Man United should be winning matches. They should be beating Brentford. I mean, ultimately, it's the fans that decide the fate of a manager or any football club, and I think that if United lose to Sunderland at the weekend, I think that Ruben Amorim will, if his players can't get themselves up for a match, knowing that the manager's job is on the line, if they believe in him, and if they can't beat Sunderland, a promoted team, although playing very well this season, it has to be said, you'd have to say that I think Ruben Amorim, if we get beaten, and if we get beaten badly on Saturday, I think unfortunately that's the end of this adventure with Ruben. See, none of this is about like or dislike or anything else. It's not about having any real personal opinions on the manager. It's not about creating a storm in order to make his job untenable, as a football fan, or in terms of what we do with our podcast and channel, and the group that we have, and the social media platforms that we have. Football is really about entertainment. It's about entertainment. It's a break from everyone's harsh realities people have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. It's something to look forward to at the weekend. And the reality is that Man United have been ruining people's weekends for the last, I don't know how long at this stage. So Ruben Amorim has to start winning, and he has to start winning really fast, because the majority of the fans that I know have just had enough now. And it's not that they've had enough of him, they've had enough of Man United. I mean, it's hard enough to get kids to focus on anything, especially from the ages of like 8, 9, 10 up to 15, 16. But it's like Manchester United are a really hard sell. Say what you want about Liverpool, for example, but even when Liverpool were going through rough patches, and where they never dropped as low as we've dropped over the last 2 or 3 years, particularly under the end of the reign of Eric Ten Hag, and into this new project. And it has to be said that, Liverpool, even through those kind of dodgy years, have always played some really, really good football. And they had some great strikers who are playing really good football. Your Robbie Fowlers, your Michael Owens, and even before their purple patch a few years ago, they were playing some really good football and getting into Champions League positions. Manchester United should be minimum in Champions League or Europa League positions. There's no real excuse for it. And the way things are going, as Gary Neville said, he put out a statement, or he was misquoted in the press, or quoted in the press, or whatever, that if Ruben Amorim stays in charge, that United will win the league next season and be promoted back into the Premier League. I mean, that's a kind of telling indictment of where all the ex-players are. You have Wayne Rooney coming on his own little podcast with the BBC, saying he doesn't recognise the club anymore. the minimum that football fans and Manchester United fans should expect is to be playing good football. You can play good football and not win the league. You can play good football and not finish 15th or 16th. You can play good football and not get knocked out of the Carabao Cup. It's bizarre, Ruben coming out and doing a video with Owen Hargreaves a few days ago saying that he is prepared to change his system. Now, clearly that's been pressed upon him. He's obviously had meetings with the higher ups and they've said, look, you need to change what you're doing or you will be let go. I seem to remember Amorim saying in a press conference more recently that he's not going to change the system. So the miscommunication between the press and the club and the manager and to the fans and I'm sure, look, if the fans are confused, you'd have to say that what are the players thinking and feeling? One thing that I know to be true is when you're watching the players playing for Man United, particularly under Ruben Amorim, there's a hesitancy in bringing the ball forward. They're looking around them. They seem to be overthinking everything. You're talking about someone like Kobbie Mainoo, who was, in terms of potential, on the front foot, seemed like one of the most exciting midfielders in the world at one point. And I think any football fan would agree with me on that and say, how can you go from starting a European Championships final for England into not getting your game and being brought on in the 65th minute, and keeping him at the club, probably against his wishes. Maybe Kobbie was thinking to himself that Ruben's not going to last and I'll go off and get my game somewhere else and come back. Obviously, he loves the club. He's not a stupid young man. He's obviously very clever. But it sheds a new light on a couple of different things at the club, and I know there's a lot of Man United fans out there that are watching this and, some of the older generation, and they've been through all this. They've been through the Fergie out stuff in the 80s into the early 90s. But the reality is that even during the 80s, when United weren't winning the league, they were there or thereabouts. They were top 2, 3, 4. I mean, in the 80s, under Ron and then subsequently Fergie as well, we finished second or third on 3 or 4 occasions. United need to be doing that, and the way that they're playing football, the weight of the jersey, all of that stuff, grand. It's understandable. They are one of the biggest clubs in the world, if not the biggest club in the world, and the media pressure is absolutely intense and off the charts. That's clear. But what's also clear is that, if you play for one of the top clubs in Europe, your Real Madrids, your Barcelonas, your Bayern Munichs, your Juventus, your AC Milans, and although AC Milan are going through a very similar thing that United are at the moment, you'd have to say that the manager would be gone. Bayer Leverkusen, even, that I don't think are anywhere near the same standard of any of those clubs I've mentioned, sacked Eric Ten Hag 2-3 days or 2-3 matches into the season, and you'd have to go, if you want to be elite, you have to win. You have to win games. You have to play better football. You have to not lose to mid-table to newly promoted teams. And when I say not lose, I don't mean win all the time. I mean draw, You're looking at Brentford. After 5 minutes of playing well at the start, just outplaying us. The system, getting back to Amorim and his interview with Owen Hargreaves, the system isn't working, so him changing his system is the very least that can happen going forward. Now, are we going to go back to a 4-4-2, United playing from the wings, crossing the ball in? I don't know. But someone who is as pig-headed and strong-willed as Ruben, you'd have to say that that's going to knock the confidence of someone that you would imagine is kind of running on low and self-belief even more. So I don't think that harbouring this project anymore for much longer is going to be beneficial for anyone within the club, not beneficial for the fans to watch. I think that it's okay sometimes to put your hands up and say, it's not working out, let's start again. I mean, the same applies to anything else. If you start a job and you're out of your depth and you're a good bit into it and you're not achieving your targets, if you work in any other industry and you're not achieving your targets, you're going to get sacked if you're not doing the job. If you turn up to, if you're a singer and you don't hit the notes you're supposed to hit at a big gig, you're not going to get many gigs after that. So there's certain standards and certain requirements that are, unconditional or non-negotiable when you play for a club like Real Madrid, like Barcelona, like Man United, and he's not doing the business. He's not winning matches, and it's psychotic almost, the blind ambition and belief of him of Ruben in pre-matches, and then going into the actual post-match, and even prior to that, just watching his body language on the bench, he seems to be... I've never known a manager to manage a club at that level to hide in the dugout and to look down, and I'm not sensationalizing this. I watch every game, so I see it live, and I go to quite a few games, I have done over the years. The man, sometimes these things can be taken out of context, and then you see you see photographs of like a half instant where he's kind of looking down or whatever. But I remember the Grimsby game and the Magic tactics board, and it didn't fill me with confidence. If it struck me as somebody who is out of his depth, and then seeing him kind of retreat is the term that I'd use. Leaders are not supposed to retreat. Leaders are supposed to lead by example. I admire his gusto, I really do, but let's be completely honest here, and a number of my friends have said this as well, that they didn't know who Ruben Amorim was, and they're football fans. Now, obviously, you'd know that he was managing Sporting in Portugal, etc., but he didn't, although Liverpool were circling him, Man City were circling him, that's clear. And obviously the club is as much at fault in all of this as he is. That's very clear for everyone to see. But he wasn't top of anybody's list to take over at Man United initially. And I'm not going to lie, although I knew who he was, and I knew who he was by virtue of association or links to other big clubs, I didn't know a great deal about him, and I had to Google him before he took over at United, just to see and learn a little bit more about his character and what type of person he was. Now, clearly he has really great attributes, and he's a very confident young man. In football, in terms as a manager, he's a very young man. He's around the same age as Wayne Rooney, for example. So, just for context, I admire his gusto and his self-belief, but I also know as a man of a similar age that self-doubt is a very real thing. I mean, you look at Jose Mourinho, and he was all of that very early on in his career. He was all bluster and confidence, and we're going to do it my way, and God help anybody that gets in my way. And I admire that. That's what you need in a manager. But equally, you look at someone like Pep Guardiola, who even more recently was saying that when his system isn't working, he changes it. So the biggest problem I've seen since Ruben Amorim has come in is that his reluctance, to change his system and to play differently, and to play against teams that have different strengths and weaknesses. The reality is that when people come to Old Trafford or even play United away, they know how to beat us. They know how to play through us. They know how to find our weaknesses very quickly. all they do is a lot of them do now is pack the midfield and wait for a break in the ball, and will get us on a counter attack. They get us on the wing, because we're always a man down in that system. Our defenders, as good as they've looked on and off at the start of this season, and give credit where credit's due, Matthias de Ligt has looked really good. Harry Maguire hasn't put a foot wrong really in the time that he's played, and we were very critical of Harry on this show, particularly last season, the start of last season. So, although there are shades of positivity, you'd have to say that in general terms, when someone has been so belligerent about playing a certain system and then letting certain players go, and I'm not saying all of the bomb squad should have been retained, but if he's going to move to a different system now and maybe not play with wing backs and revert back to having wingers, needing wingers, you'd have to say that, and I'm in no way am I a fan of Garnacho's attitude, but maybe he shouldn't have left. Now, having said that, he's playing a very similar role at Chelsea and just coming off the bench and, doing what he did at United. That's understandable. And his ego got the better of him, and maybe he should have stuck around and kept his mouth shut and just waited for Ruben to be sacked. Who knows? But reverting back to a different system, I think, is what we need, and then ultimately what that will do is, it'll be a stay of execution for Ruben. Players will be reverting back to different positions, and we're going to look a bit short in other ways, and I think that we need a change. I think we need a change, and we need it soon. I think Zinedine Zidane, I've been a huge fan of his, and there's always that kind of, you'll hear it come up, particularly if he's linked more heavily with Man United, that he only won the Champions League with the best team in the world at Real Madrid. But I'll tell you what Zinedine Zidane will bring immediately to Man United is, for any of the naysayers in the squad or anyone who would question him, they would be very, very stupid individuals. He's one of the most gifted players to have ever played the game. He's a very solid manager. I think it's only a matter of time before he gets back into management. United have been chasing him over the last 4 or 5 years. They have. So you'd have to say that he would be someone that would be top of the list for any, world-class club. So I would put all my eggs in the Zidane basket. We need that arrogance. Maybe for a while we need a little bit less attention on the coach, and I think the fact that Zidane doesn't speak English if he comes in would be helpful for the club, because there's always that lost in translation thing. It reminds me of when Conte took over at Chelsea. We all knew that Conte's English was a lot better than he said and portrayed in the media, and that took the focus off him so he could just go and do his job. So I think that United need to get back to playing good football, and whatever that looks like and under who, needs to happen very, 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 very quickly. So, looking at Sunderland tomorrow, you'd have to say that United should beat them. But having said that, anything can happen. And the thing about making content like this is that you can very easily and very quickly contradict yourself by virtue of what you put out quickly in order to hit deadlines and get stuff out before matches, and etc., etc. But I know it affects all of the people who make this content, because that's the problem with United also, is that they make Man United fans, which are predominantly we are, make us feel foolish. Because everything is pointing to the direction of United beating certain teams and doing well and doing the job, and then it doesn't happen. It also makes, pundits and football journalists look silly as well, because things are not going, like, form doesn't exist when it comes to Man United. We can play really well in one match and then really bad in the next, or vice versa. It can continue. I think United will go hell for leather. I think, and I've been saying this for the last couple of games, he should really start the new goalkeeper. What's the point in buying him if you're not going to play him? David De Gea was good enough when he was old enough and good enough when he was signed for United and went straight in. I think Amorim hasn't put him in because if he doesn't take like a duck to water, he knows that will definitely get him the boot. So, predictions. I'm going to say United will win 1-0, and I think it's the most important match in Ruben Amorim's tenure. I think if the players can't get themselves up to beat Sunderland tomorrow, and maybe they won't because they want him gone, who knows, but I'm going to say Ruben will live to fight another day, and I think United will win 1-0. So what do you think? We will try to be more optimistic in the coming weeks and months. Something has to change, or someone has to go, and it has to happen really, really, really quickly. 1-0 to United. I think Sesko will score, because him scoring at him scoring at Brentford last week will boost his confidence, and he'll know he can do it, and he broke the hoodoo. But I can't help feeling that watching Rasmus score during the week is something that we will rue. Let's see. Subscribe, leave some comments below. Let us know what you think yourselves. We'd love to engage with you on socials. We have a WhatsApp group. We have a Facebook group. Obviously, you'll get us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all of those. And if you really, really like what we're doing, because we don't at the moment being Man United fans, but if you really want to help us and support the show, jump on and drop us a coffee on buymeacoffee.com/Cult of Cantona. No just Cult of Cantona. buymeacoffee.com/Cult of Cantona, or become a member. We're also going to be doing a giveaway with Rascals Brewery, so if you'd like some free beers, become a member on buymeacoffee.com/Cult of Cantona, and we'll be picking someone at random in the next couple of episodes. So thanks to Rascals Brewery, Rascals Brewing, Brewery, and thanks to everybody who supported the show and watches the videos. Glory, Man United, I guess.